Anathera! If you're new here, I am the Book Mage, and if you are not new, then welcome back. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be my last video of 2023. A year that has not been the best for me, but if I'm to do one productive book-related thing this year, it is going to be to figure out which book is my favourite book. So for years, whenever anybody has ever asked me the question, what's your favourite book? I always say, it's actually two books. So I always tell people that my favourite book is either Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice, or The Stolen Throne by David Gader. One of these books is my favourite, and I don't know which. They're both very different books as well. Very different in tone, very different in content, very different in target audience. But one of these two books is going to be my favourite book of all time. Now, I reread Interview with the Vampire quite recently. I say that, I think it was in it might have been 2019. I think I was about 16 years old the first time I ever read this, and it had a very big impact on me. And when I reread it, I found out that I still considered this a 5-star read, but it had slightly less impact on me, and I think that's like a given. This one, I think I might have read this around the same age. I think I must have been like 15, 16 when I first read this, and I also gave this 5 out of 5 stars. However, I have no idea how I'm going to feel about this upon a reread, and despite this being one of my favourite books of all time, possibly my favourite, I've never continued with the series, and honestly same for this as well. I've said that I really do want to continue further with the series, and to do that I wanted to start off with a reread. So you can kind of see where this is going. Basically, I'm going to be rereading potentially my favourite book of all time, and by the end of this video I want to know which one of these two is actually my actual favourite book. The book that for the rest of my life, or at least the foreseeable future, I'll be telling people is my favourite book when they ask. If they ask. I hope they ask. So yeah, this is like a battle of the books, a showdown, but I realise this content may be very niche. So Interview with the Vampire I'm not going to talk about much because I've already done this reread. I will link like the wrap up where I talk about this book, but I don't think I talk about it that much, to be honest, because this book is very well known. It's like a classic. It is basically where I kind of want to say like most modern vampire literature owes itself to this book. This book, on the other hand, the book I'm going to be reading in this video, this definitely needs an introduction. Basically, this is a video game prequel spin-off novel for the hit video game franchise Dragon Age. Now, if you have not played Dragon Age Origins, this book is pointless and useless to you, and you probably will not care about it at all. Basically, it's a fantasy role-playing game that came out in like, I don't know, like the mid-2000s, and it's my favourite game of all time. So I'm very biased because I love everything about this world and the characters and the events, and I have a lot of like personal attachment to this series and everything to do with it. It's kind of like, it's my favourite piece of media ever, if that helps make sense of things. So the Dragon Age universe is like very close to my heart and something I love very, very much. And this book, it's kind of like it's a very basic fantasy plot. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I remember loving this. I remember having a very strong emotional reaction to much of this book, and I kind of want to see if that is going to be the same the second time around. So I'll be filming myself, maybe not reading this, but like doing like, I guess, checkups and updates when I can, or when I have something substantial to say. So you'll get some of my like live feedback, and come the end of this video I'll be picking my favourite book. So I can at least say that in 2022 I finally decided, after like 10 years, I finally decided which one of these is my favourite book. So if you want to see me figure that out in real time, then do join me, but I totally understand if this video is like of interest to no one but me. So I'm gonna get going on my reread, and I'll let you know how it goes. Hey, so I've got my Christmas jumper on, and I'm about to start reading, or rereading, The Stolen Throne. Definitely nervous, but also definitely in the mood for this. Hello! Oh, you can really tell I've slept in my makeup. So it's actually been 2 days and I'm not as far into the book as I would like to be. I'm like 200 and something. I'm just shy of page 230 and I think this is like a 400-page book exactly, so a little bit over halfway. But I didn't really get any reading done at all yesterday because obviously it's like the Christmas season and we were visiting and stuff, so I didn't get to read anything yesterday. That said, this book, it feels way longer than it did the first time, like way longer than I remember it feeling. I think it's just because, and I think this is the thing about mass market paperbacks, and it is a thing that I like about them, every page on a mass market paperback is so goddamn dense. Every single page in this is just like pure exposition, like it's constant narration. There is dialogue and stuff going on, but it's quite sparse, which is weird because one of the things I remember really liking about this book was the characters, the characterization, like specifically the dialogue, because one thing that Dragon Age does really well is witty party banter. Yeah, it's one of those where I still love it. I still love the universe so much. I'm not sure if I am just biased because it's Dragon Age, but like I know there's so much more to happen like in this like little bit of the book. Like all the drama is somewhere in this last bit because there's a lot of drama coming. I do think that, especially with this being like a video game book, it's meant to tell a specific story that precedes the events of the game by like a generation. So it has a very specific like set of things to cover, and I think if you'd maybe envisioned this story like regardless of the games, if you were just a writer who like had an idea for like these characters and this sort of plot, you might have stretched it into like a duology or something, or spent a lot more time in certain places, whereas a lot of this is we have to get through all of like these points in history, tie things up in a way that will sort of like lead both into the next book but also the game, because the next book after this does also follow some of the characters from this, which I think is not the case for any other book in this series. It's a very basic plot, and obviously it's because it's just, the point of the book is basically just to tell you some of the background to the game. Like if you played the game and you liked it enough and you want to know a bit more about the history, like from like a point of view of these characters instead of just reading it in like a codex, that's what this book is. So I feel like it's not allowed as much like room as it would have if it were not like a video game tie-in novel. But at the same time, like I love this universe so much, and like I know the hurt is coming because I'm not necessarily gonna like spoil anything from here in case you do want to read it or play the game. And like look, I know the game is so dated and the graphics are like kind of dated, but like they've always been kind of dated, but like it's my favourite game ever, and if you've never played it and you like fantasy things, it's like, it's gotta be so cheap to play, like just play it. And also if you play it, play a mage. Circle Mage and Dalish Elf are like my favourite starting points, but like I just feel like if you play a mage there's so much more to this universe. Anyway, that's me and my love of like forbidden magic coming in. Anyway, I'm gonna go and like, I feel like I reckon I might be able to finish this today depending on like what else I have to do, sort of things I might have to prioritise given that it's like the Christmas season. So I am really enjoying this read through so far, but I think if you find a book that's perfect for you at a certain moment, several years down the line, if you're like no longer in that same like place, a book is never necessarily going to hit as hard. And I knew this wouldn't hit as hard the second time round, but I am hoping some of the future books might actually. Yeah, I am having fun with this reread and I'm glad I read it at this time of season. I don't know why, something about Dragon Age Origins occasionally makes me feel Christmassy. I don't know why. I think there's some crossed wires in my brain. I reckon I can finish this, so I reckon the next time I check in I will have finished this, and I guess I'll then have to decide whether I like The Stolen Throne more than Interview with the Vampire. Honestly, not a choice I ever wanted to make. It's been over 10 years of me saying, oh yeah, my favourite book is like one of these two books. Anyway, right, I'm going. Hey, so before I start on this update, I just want to say, excuse my appearance because like I'm right in the middle of bleaching my roots, which is probably why I look so weird. And also apparently the sun is ever my enemy because there's just a random bright spot here that I can't do anything about right now, so we're just gonna ignore that. But I have finished The Stolen Throne, my second time reading this book. Oh, what to say about this? So I will say, the end of this book, like the last 100-200 pages, is much faster than like the midsection. I feel like that's where like a lot more of the character sort of comes from. Like there's a lot more in terms of there's like slightly more dialogue, and there's a lot of drama. It tends to all pick up in like the last like quarter, last third of the book, and I did very much enjoy it, and I was really reminded of just how much I love this world. All I want to do now is go back and play Dragon Age Origins. That's all I want to do. But having said that, at the end of this book, when I thought what I would rate it if I were to put it like on Goodreads or Storygraph, oh, this is gonna hurt so much. I think now, would probably rate this about a 4 stars, which is really, really sad because I had really wanted this to still be like a 5-star book. And obviously when I first read it, many years ago, when I first read this book, it was 5 stars to me. It was like one of the best things I'd ever read. But like me now, reading it now, this is a 4-star book, and some of that is also still like boosted a little bit by my love of the characters and the setting, and the fact that like I can literally 100% just sit down and read like the Dragon Age Wikipedia entries and the Codex entries. Like I've purchased several expensive books that basically do just that. Some of this kind of relies on like, in terms of like, I think my original enjoyment was in finding out things like about like the history and like the past and certain events that led to where you are at the start of the game. That was obviously like really entertaining and fantastic for me to find out. I have known that for a long time now, and I will say, I can't remember, I think I mentioned that there's like a certain thing that is discussed in this book which I think directly ties to like, it's like my own little personal like conspiracy theory. It ties to like why a certain character does what they do in the very beginning of the game, which like sets everything in motion. Reading that section, it's not necessarily a reveal because it's not treated that way. It's just treated as like, I almost remember it being like a bigger thing. I remember the scene, I remember the setting, but I seem to remember it being like bigger in scope or like more dramatic, but like it wasn't. It was like 2, maybe 3 lines just offhand. But when I read it, like I remember having a strong emotional reaction to that the first time round, because I was like, oh my god, is that one line, does one certain character take that one line to heart so much that they do something so at the start of the video game which leads to the events of the game taking place as they then do. It just changed my whole perspective, and like things like that didn't hit as hard the second time round. And like I think because I had such like a strong, insanely strong reaction to reading that the first time. Like I remember being like, I must have been like walking around my house being like, oh my god, this changes everything, oh my god. Even though it's just like a passing line in conversation, and I love when authors do that, because if it is meant that way, it's such like a subtle thing to pick up on, and I love that. But obviously when I read that the first time, it was like a massive impact. So I think reading this again, I expected the scene to be slightly more dramatic, but like, or to go on for longer. I seem to remember it being like a longer exchange, and it just wasn't. And again, that's my memories, like they're skewed, like they're coloured by my own perception of like what I remember. So when it came to reading this and it wasn't like that, it was a bit like, oh, okay, it's so much shorter, which again is probably why I think I'm still the only person who has this stupid conspiracy theory. I need to talk about it so goddamn much. Anyway, I am just the kind of person who will enjoy this book way more than the average person would anyway. I still do consider this one of my favourite books. At this point, I'm mostly just excited to go on and read like the rest of the books in this series, because that's something that I would really like to do. But yeah, I wish this had stayed as a 4 stars, it just didn't, which means like for the sake of this video, I think that I now know that my favourite book must therefore be Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. I guess Interview with a Vampire is like now officially my favourite book. Okay, my camera died, which probably means I should hurry up and end this, but basically when people now ask me what is your favourite book, I will no longer have to say, oh well, it's either Interview with a Vampire or The Stolen Throne. And obviously nobody's ever heard of this, which makes it awkward. But I guess now when they ask me, I will be able to say my favourite book is Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. It's a sad day for this book. I love this book. This book is like an important part of me and my identity, because for years I have been like lumping this in with potentially my favourite book. So like a lot of people who talk to me, like even if it's just people at work being like, oh you read, oh what's your favourite book, I tell them about this. I name drop this book. I don't necessarily go into like the plot or anything, but like I name drop this book. This book has been attached to me and my name for like well over a decade. And I'm sad that like new people, when they meet me and they ask me what my favourite book is, I'm not going to get to say this because I don't think it's factually correct anymore. Which is sad. I don't know. I still might consider this as like a... You know, people do those like get to know me by reading like my favourite books or certain books. I feel like I might still put this in there because like, who am I without Dragon Age anyway? Like, for real. With that said, I guess this is the end of like my little reading vlog experiment sort of thing, and I'm sad that I didn't get to rate this a 5 stars again, but like at least I know what my favourite book is. I kind of had a suspicion, mainly based on the fact that like one of them is kind of like a classic, and then like one of them's a video game tie-in novel. It was uneven from the start. Like, it's my own personal biases that like put this in the position that it was in the first place. So I don't know, even if it's maybe not interesting for you to know, it's interesting for me to know what my goddamn favourite book is. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far into my video, maybe leave me like a little dragon emoji. Do we have dragon emojis? If we have dragon emojis, leave me a dragon emoji. I don't remember seeing one. But if we don't, maybe leave me like that like cool crossed swords emoji, because like that's very Dragon Agey, right? So yeah, one of those. Take your pick. And if you did make it this far, then like thank you so much for like sticking through this, because I know this video has probably been like a little bit everywhere. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please as well do let me know what your favourite book is in the comment section below. I do really love hearing about like other people's favourite books, so, and especially if it's something that I've not read, it's like maybe I want to pick that up. But thank you so much for watching, and maybe I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!